Somewhere, with someone on the job, everything we have is started. Somewhere, on some fertile acre, the plow knifes through soil that abounds in promise. And the farmer, although he plows alone, is not alone. His life is tied in with the lives of many others, of all of us who depend on him and on his mechanized labors. And he, in turn, depends on all of us. Somewhere on a lonely range, the earth trembles under the hoofs of cattle on the move. And the man who rides the range alone, if he listens with vision, can hear in the rumble of the herd the beginnings of the rumble of distant machinery in the factories where others will finish the work he has begun. Somewhere, someone sets a blast to erupt rich ores of metal from stubborn rock, and sets men to work in smelter and in blast furnace, in mill and in factory. And thereafter, people, many interdependent people, come to fashion the products of human inventiveness from all the bounty of nature. Wheat. And to grow the wheat, it takes a farmer. From New York to Michigan, to Nebraska to Oregon, and from the Dakotas down through all the great grain belt, 1,000, 10,000, and 100,000 wheat farmers grow the finest of wheat. Raw material for industrial alcohols, for fine finishes. Sugar. And to grow sugar, the sugar farmer. In the bottomlands of Mississippi and the Everglades of Florida, on the Delta and in the Evangeline country, grows the sugar cane. Cane sugar, raw material for carbon and lampblack, for solvents. Cotton, and the farmer to grow the cotton. Raw material for fabrics and for lacquers and for plastics. In the Carolinas, in Georgia, Tennessee, and Arkansas, Alabama, throughout the Old South, and even in the Deep South, cotton still is king. In Texas, too, and now in California, there's a great snowy harvest, cartload by cartload and bale upon bale, as far as the eye can see. Cotton for fabrics and wool for fabrics. On the slopes of the Sierras, a sheep herder. He grazes his flock in the high, cool air that builds thicker, longer, finer, stronger fleeces on milling backs. Mohair goats roam the plains of Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico, where all the silken fleece is tempered by baking days and toughened by freezing nights. Fine fleece of the sheep flock and long stapled fleece of the mohair goats for fine upholstery. Tough hides for tough, durable leather, and it takes tough, durable men to ride the herds to grow those hides to harvest. From the Oxbow to the Laramie, all along the Red River and the Rio Grande, 1,000, 10,000 outflung herds. With sun and with wind, with rain and with sand as her tools, with heat and with cold, nature burnishes and strengthens hide and hair on the open range from Dodge City to the foothills of the Western Mountains. Perhaps there are jobs you never thought of as being an important part of the great American economy pattern. But every basic task is essential to the necessity and convenience of all in this blessed land. A barrel in Florida and in Georgia is the first link in an endless conveyor belt that winds its way from south to west and north, from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. In the oil fields of all America, there is a man-made tree that grows, a deep-rooted tree that is to yield a strange assortment of fruits which will be soap and candles, paints and asphalts. From its roots, thousands of feet in the earth, the oil well rig brings forth the harvest of precious sap that is to become a polish and a lubricant and a coloring and a fuel. In the giant test tubes and apparatus of the refineries, the oil crudes here are cracked and distilled. Here are cleaned and purified. Here are separated and sorted into 100 basic materials for 1,000 interdependent industries and 1,000 times 1,000 interdependent workers, managers, and engineers. On the job, commanding great tools, from deep within the plentiful earth come the metal ores with which America is so richly blessed. Copper for bearings and copper for batteries. Copper for radiators and for electrical systems. Copper from Utah and Montana, from Michigan and Wyoming, from Colorado and New Mexico, from Idaho and Arizona and Nevada. And again, more of the red gold metal from Washington and Oregon. This red, powdery earth is rust. Call it iron ore, call it ferric oxide. It is the touchstone that has magically transformed a civilization. In the raw red earth of Hibbing on the Mesabi, the Clinton and Vermilion Ranges, steel has its beginnings. The mother of steel is iron. There is more than a ton of iron and steel in the car you drive. Several kinds of iron and more than 100 kinds of steel. And from the rusting earth come the ores that are the beginnings of all that rich harvest of metals born of iron and sired by the coal that is mated with iron to make steels of many kinds. Soft coal, hard coal, and the coke that comes from coal to bring steel into being. To purify and refine the steels, coal and coke. To harden steel for roller bearings and for starter motor assemblies, fine molybdenum. To toughen steel in precision parts, fine vanadium. To shape and to polish precise mechanical parts, crystalline quartz. For alloy steels, for stainless steel, for plating bumpers and ornamental trim, bright chromium. For the tiny filaments in electric light bulbs, tungsten. For storage batteries, for radiator assemblies, and for the Babbitt metal in engine bearings, pure lead. And even the more famously precious metal, gold. Any metal can be more precious than gold if it is the one metal needed at the time. Each metal may depend on one or more of the others for successful use. Copper and aluminum are precious in themselves. And all these ores for all these many metals call for many men to dig them from the earth and bring them forth. Any natural lack or artificial shortage may stop the entire economic parade. You may be a lumberjack teamed up in Washington or Maine, in Mississippi or in Michigan, in Florida or Georgia or East Texas, in the Paul Bunyan country or the empire of the Pacific Northwest. The trees you fell and the logs you drive make pulp for paper to blueprint the dreams that put 100,000 men to work on a new model and a new job. The way we do it in America takes a lot of different people working together in a lot of different places. As all rivulets and brooks flow to make the river, so all the wondrous products of forest and ranch, mine and farm flow together. On highways of steel, the many raw materials move, contributions of every state in the Union. On highways of gravel and concrete, roll the basic supplies for the mills of industry. And on the high air lanes of the trackless skies, fly products to the factories for processing. In the textile mills of Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and the Carolinas, sheep wool and mohair are the beginnings of more interrelated jobs for men and for women. Spun by mechanical spiders into gleaming strands, cotton, sheep wool, and mohair are woven by incredibly precise mechanical fingers into luxury fabrics. Corn, the golden treasure of farmers in Iowa, Indiana, and Illinois, and corn of Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Nebraska. One way of changing corn into leather is on the subassembly line of the feeding lot, but a shorter way is through the magic of chemistry. Corn is now directly processed into the plastic ingredients of artificial leather. With these rich and glowing colors, the chemists improve on nature. Yard after endless yard of perfect and flawless material bears ingrained in its very structure the colors and designs that will enhance its beauty in the interior trim of the finest motor cars. The tire you ride on, born in a Mississippi cotton patch, in a cane field in Louisiana. Maybe it started when some of its strange synthetic makings were pumped up from the ground in California or boiled up from the earth in Texas. And in the factories of Detroit and Akron and Dayton, men weave and fashion the basic materials, cotton and rayon, sulfur and carbon, rubber from trees and rubber from oil wells. A gripping, springing, live thing, resiliently spry and untiringly useful. Sand and flame make glass, but it takes skilled men to grind and polish glass to optical clarity for safety vision. And seeing to all of it, then again seeing that the finished product is perfect for seeing, means yet another long chain of interdependent jobs from sandpit through factory. The processing of fine ores into finer steels for the finest of product brings into play a great range of facilities. The linkage of jobs to be done along the line is always and infinitely expanding. From flat stock and sheet metal, bar and rod and ingot, come the basic forms to be forged and pressed, to be cut, to be ground, and then polished into many thousands of interrelated but separate and individual parts in factories located along all the railways and highways of America. For the bumpers of your family car, steel from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and steel from Pittsburgh, California, joined with the copper from Utah and chromium from Texas for beauty combined with massive protection. The handiwork of men in the mill and men in the smelter makes work for the hands of men in the casting and forging plants. Melted and cast into the cylinder block of the valve and head engine are the gray iron pigs. Here in gray iron are the tough settings for the bone structure of the finest transportation for all of us on all our roads and boulevards. What we harvest, what we dig, and what we produce roll into the work days and paydays and play days of all of us. Here, gleaming and precise, is a differential pinion gear. It took a miner to get it from the ground and a railroad man to carry it to the docks. A crew of merchant seamen cargoed the red dust to the blast furnaces. It took the chemist and the metallurgist to alloy and temper before it could be shaped. Engineers designed it, using pencils made in Pennsylvania and slide rules from New York. To design and build the phenomenal machine tools to make the machines, it took men in other plants. To build these intricate and wonderful machines themselves took other skillful men in other factories. To guide and to use the machines takes more men with hands that are skilled and finely productive. Behind each such job is the mighty panorama of men at other jobs. All of us making a living and making a fine product for others and ourselves and our families. For all of us who run machines and for all of us who sell other things to other men who run machines. Gauges, to increase the powers of vision 1,000 times, to make the sense of touch so delicate that it can weigh a puff of smoke, to magnify the inch 1,000,000-fold. Gauges that are marvels of precision extend the senses of men in the countless comparisons, inspections, and tests that finalize the perfection of each working part. It takes supreme precision to give us the smooth and effortless driving that all of us want. But men and women, and only men and women, have the judgment to tell right from wrong, to separate the best from anything less than the best. Making sure we have done right by all the finest materials America can supply calls for a whole new category of excellence in service. Vigilance and devotion applied to the ideal of seeing that only the best passes inspection. In the factories, locally built, giving local employment in every great area of the nation. Each factory with its system of communications and intercommunications is in itself a part and portion of other factories, which begin where it ends or end where it starts, to fabricate or fashion or finish the fine products of the thousands of suppliers and the thousands of suppliers who supply those suppliers with all the parts of all the components that help to make up the complete automobile. Today's product of the superbly equipped plants is the life story of 10,000 engineers, with hundreds of supporting departments and thousands of supporting suppliers, completed by the master hands of 1,000,000 factory men who inscribe all their ideas in metal. The careful and meticulous attention to every detail of quality and perfection has resulted in constantly improved performance, efficiency, and stamina through the years. That is the story told in the rhythm of the wondrously precise machines as they dance to the mastery of the worker's hands. Each of more than 17,000 parts must fit smoothly, accurately, rightly with some other part. And the men on the assembly lines know that each part will be there when it is needed, because someone plans it that way and manages it that way. The men on the assembly lines know that each material will be fitting and each part will fit, because someone builds it that way and someone checks it to see that it is that way. And so it is that in the finished motor car, 17,000 separate and individual parts are so well designed and so well combined, all to give us just the qualities we demand in our finest of transportation: the beauty and the comfort and the fine long life performance with fine. From all the designs and all the plans, all the materials from all the processes, and all the parts made by all the skills of all the men and all the magic of all the machines, move through all the pageant of production in a great orchestration of interdependence, one upon another and another, into a fine climactic assembly of the finest products of all of us, for all of us, for all the farms and all the cities and towns of all our land. And the men who inspect the final product know that each part must be of perfection certified, quality first to last. The harvest of America's finest automobiles keeps rolling off the assembly lines year after year, every year finer and finer. The face of America has been changed. A factory is built out in the open country, and quickly a great city arises around it. Over broad highways made by and made for the automobile, what Americans have produced comes back to serve Americans. So it is that we can live in the country, work in the city. Life in America has changed. So it is that we can make our living on a farm and have a home in town. So it is that we can live where we want to. The shopping centers now come out to meet us. The ever-expanding involvement of people takes on a new dimension. the great new dimension of interrelated use. The new individual transportation means new freedom of movement to all of us, the dispelling of distance, and for country dwellers as for city dwellers, a new and far and wide range of life. New businesses, large and small, have developed from putting America on wheels. It has created more jobs for more people, all interdependent on each other. And all continue to profit from it in ever new ways in each new generation of youth. Putting America's children on wheels has changed our schools. It has made possible better education, has built for better training for tomorrow. And all will profit from it in health and wealth and recreation. Putting America's workers on wheels now means that there is more work within ready reach, more work for men to do, and more ways to get to the work and make more money. On the money somebody else makes. All of us are dependent for the harvest of money we make. In all America, the money we make on any job changes hands many times. And every time it changes hands, it benefits all of us. The miner and the farmer and the rancher, all producing the finest materials. The worker and the machine, all using the finest, the newest processes to do finely by those finest materials. Building the finest and the largest low-cost cars and trucks for everyone to haul anything, anywhere, and haul anyone, including ourselves. And so it is that all of us in interdependence live independently on wheels. And all this far-reaching interdependence is the great secret of why it is possible to put America's automobile within the reach of so many people. And all America, all its rock-bound beauty, all its pleasant vistas, all its historic shrines, and all its ways of living, all its sports and recreations, all its scenic grandeur along all its far-flung highways within the reach of all.
Between the Mason and Dixon line and Upper Georgia, bordering the coastal plain on the west, stands the Appalachian Mountain Barrier, the Shenandoah, the Blue Ridge, the Great Smokies. These are the ramparts of the South, the flowering southern highlands. Bestowed by the mountains is the great gift of water, highland forest water, clear and never failing, seeping and trickling down from the Appalachian heights. Finally are formed broad, majestic rivers like the James, the Roanoke, and the Rappahannock. It was the life-giving water of the southern mountains, as much as mankind's courage and energy, that created here, generations ago, a rich culture and a gracious way of life. In the fertile plain from the mountains to the sea, there was generated a prosperous farming society, an aristocracy of the soil whose wealth and charm were and are uniquely of America. Deep in the tradition of the South are fat fields of waving grain, high-bred farm creatures, pastured handsomely and housed in lordly style. Richest of all in the Southland's heritage, and the crop most peculiarly suited to that happy land, is the broadleaf plant which earliest settlers found the Indians smoking in their red clay pipes, the aromatic annual called tobacco. Tobaccoland, USA, extends from the top of Chesapeake Bay well down into Florida and westward into Missouri, and is divided into three major regions. The largest is the so-called Bright Belt in Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. Tobacco types are determined by differences of soil, rainfall, and temperature. The type most widely grown and producing the largest annual income is called bright tobacco, so named because of the golden color of its cured leaf. Bright tobacco is heat-treated on racks in a curing barn. This process gives it a mildness and flavor that provides the base for a wide range of different smoking blends. From Maryland comes another major strain of tobacco grown in just 5 counties of the state. In blending, it serves a double purpose. It has a flavor found in no other tobacco, and it burns more freely. Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio grow the third major strain of tobacco, burley, famous the world over for its fine smoking qualities. The burley leaf is more like Maryland than bright, and, like Maryland, is cured simply by hanging it in well-ventilated barns. Prized for the spice it imparts to the blend is the highly aromatic small-leafed strain of tobacco known as Turkish. Millions of pounds of Turkish are imported for Chesterfield from the Near East every year. Aromatic tobacco of as high quality as native Turkish is now being grown right in our own Southland. These highly successful experiments are being made by Duke University, working together with the farmers and farm agencies. From the mountainous region of Tobaccoland near Asheville, North Carolina, comes the world's finest cigarette paper, important in the making of your Chesterfield. Until a few years ago, cigarette paper had to be imported. Today, mountain water from the Great Smoky Forests is filtered, aerated, and repeatedly purified at the factory of the Augusta Paper Company. In the fertile fields of Minnesota and in the American Southwest are endless acres of flax, until recently grown primarily for its seed. The flax fiber is brought by train loads to be processed in Augusta's new streamlined paper mill. Mixed with pure cold mountain water, the flax is shredded and pounded to a creamy pulp. It is passed through mixers and condensers until it is ready to be spread on a fast-traveling, fine-meshed screen where the water is drawn off and the pulp passed on to be formed into cigarette paper, miles and miles of it. The center of all this activity is Durham, North Carolina, capital of Tobaccoland and home of the Liggett and Myers Tobacco Company. Here, where Chesterfields are made, we can see the magnitude and the complexities of the cigarette business today. For tobacco, fresh from the fields and the curing barns, must be aged, conditioned, and blended before it is ready for your Chesterfield. From the baskets in which it arrives from the auction, the tobacco must be taken into the factory and racked up once more. The leaves must have their moisture content adjusted to a uniform level, so the racks are passed into a chamber where an exact amount of moisture is established, the amount best for tobacco to have when it enters upon its aging process. For long and careful aging, the new tobacco is packed into hogsheads, which have been especially constructed out of finest western fir. Into each hogshead is pressed about half a ton of grated leaf, Bright, Burley, or Maryland. On the outskirts of Durham, Liggett and Meyer's vast warehouses stretch out like a city within a city. Endless is the parade of trucks bringing hogsheads of tobacco to be aged. In the warehouses, the hogsheads are stacked up according to an elaborate plan of rotation, and on each is fastened a pedigree of the tobacco that it contains, where it was grown, what type it is, and when it was bought. For many long months, these pedigreed tobaccos are left like vintage wines to undergo natural changes under scientifically controlled conditions. To understand tobacco as a business and as a way of life, one must enter a home which tobacco was built, and where an entire family's life moves with the growth cycle of the crop. Of the many farmers in tobacco land, Claude Whitehead of Chatham, Virginia, is one of the most progressive. The tobacco cycle begins in January, and plans for the year's operations absorb the interest of the whole Whitehead family. Winter is waning, and the time has come to get ready the tobacco seed bed. Tobacco seed is almost microscopic, about the size of the poppy seeds you get on bakery rolls. The farmer mixes the seed with neutral soil to ensure an even distribution in the sowing. His seed has been selected after many years of experimentation and improvement, not only by the planter, but by government agencies. The three great types of American tobacco, Maryland, Burley, and Bright, were each developed regionally by natural factors, but variations within each type have been scientifically adapted to help the farmer get the best and the most abundant yield from his particular acreage. While the seeds are germinating, there will be plenty of time for many small spring chores around the farm. It is a great day for the farmer when the seed bed's protective covering can be drawn back to inspect the first leaflets of this new year's tobacco crop. But before the seedlings can be transplanted to the fields, many more warm and sunny days must pass. While the fruit trees flower, all of Tobacco Land's farmers prepare their fields to receive the tobacco seedlings. A farmer usually drives his own tractor to plow his own acres, for like all farmers, the tobacco planter loves the soil. Then too, tobacco is a crop requiring infinite pains. Farmers like to say that it takes 13 months a year to raise good tobacco, months of planning and preparation, months of careful attention to the growing crop. Dawn of the first transplanting day comes as a 0 hour for the tobacco farmer. He will be up with the sun and will breakfast heartily, for before nightfall, tens of thousands of his tobacco seedlings must be taken from the seed bed and set out to grow. At stake in this operation will be Farmer Whitehead's biggest cash crop and the bulk of his income for the year ahead. All hands are needed in the fields and at the seed beds on this day to lift the baby plants gently out of the earth and carry them to the planting fields. To set out his tobacco seedlings precisely and individually in neat rows and at exact intervals, Farmer Whitehead uses an ingenious device which, although slower than automatic transplanters, enables him to see that every one of his plants is healthy and gets a proper start in life. On this day, or on days near it, the entire Southland will be stitched across with a delicate green pettipoint. Now, a prayer for rain. Tens of thousands of thirsty shoots need water. Again, the Southland's mountain ranges come to the aid of the farmer in lifting the damp winds from the sea to be cooled and condensed into the blessing of rain. More spring days pass. The critical period is over. Tobacco seedlings have struck root and are growing sturdily. Until they get too tall, they can be cultivated by power machinery, carefully steered along the contoured rows. The earth must not be allowed to harden and cake around the young roots. Weeds must be discouraged, and for this work there is no labor-saving substitute for the good old-fashioned hoe. Even in a mechanical age, no one who wrests a good life from the soil can avoid diligent work, nor would they want to. While the men are busy with tobacco, Mother Whitehead has some rows of her own to hoe. Like everything else about the Whitehead farm, Mrs. Whitehead's department is thoroughly equipped to make the most of nature's bounty. Time was when folks only canned their vegetables or laid them away to dry. Mrs. Whitehead can take her vegetables garden fresh and deep freeze them so that the Whiteheads can enjoy fresh vegetables all next winter. Farm life need not be as tiresome as it used to be. A farmer's lady need not be a drudge. Between household chores, there is time for many more pleasant things. Time for gracious living, time for a flower garden, time for the problems of the young. Like many of the ladies in tobacco land, Mrs. Whitehead takes proper pride in her grounds and planting. And this year, her garden club holds its midsummer show at her home. And for the young, vacation is not all hoeing and weeding. Meanwhile, the southern sun shines, the tobacco leaves fill out, and the summer is a long, lazy growing time. Frequently, the county agent comes by to check with Farmer Whitehead on the progress of his tobacco crop. The plants are strong and healthy. How many pounds does it look like to the acre? Because of their years of experience, Farmer Whitehead and the agent can quite accurately answer that question far ahead of picking time. Granted, of course, normal weather for the remainder of the growing season. Another turning point in the tobacco cycle comes when the stalk is ready to blossom into a white flower, which, if allowed to bloom, would make tobacco land even more picturesque. But instead, the budding stalk is broken off to direct the plant's full strength into growing richer and more luxuriant leaves. This operation is called topping, and each single plant of Mr. Whitehead's many thousands must be dealt with individually. While the top tobacco is getting its final growth, there is time to harvest other crops. For the tobacco farmer of today, however prosperous, is not a one-crop operator. Wheat he may raise and other grains. For the livestock, there will be a crop of hay, not just stacked up, but properly baled. Mr. Whitehead's hay crop includes some fine alfalfa. Dairy products form a considerable portion of tobacco land's output. Though tobacco yields the most money, still things can happen to a tobacco crop, and thrifty men, like Farmer Whitehead, use all their acres wisely. But tobacco and everything that affects it remains the central interest. The pot of gold at the rainbow's end is a barn full of rich yellow tobacco leaves. By early autumn, Farmer Whitehead's crop of bright tobacco is ready to be picked. Tobacco men call it cropping. And a curious array of mule-drawn sleds appears in the fields to fetch the crop. The ripest leaves, those at the bottom of the stalk, are picked first. Again, the work is all done by hand in several stages as the upper leaves mature in their turn. The magnitude of this task can be appreciated when you figure that there will be about 7,800 tobacco plants to each acre and about 20 leaves to be picked from each plant. Thus, only 10 acres of tobacco mean about 1.5 million leaves to be picked and handled separately, and handled not just once, but several times over. The first handling is to string the leaves on long sticks to get them ready for the curing barn. Now, man takes over from nature, takes the lush green leaf and ripens it into the softest gold. No other crop harvested by man is more tenderly handled. Instead of being left to caprices of the weather, it will have its moisture content properly controlled. From the field, the laden sticks are taken to the curing barn. There, the sticks are racked up across the rafters, row upon row, right up to the roof. These curing barns, 20 feet square and 20 feet high, are the special mark of the tobacco farm wherever you go in the South. They used to be built of logs, chinked up with mud or plaster. The barns of modern tobacco farmers are of a more efficient, modern structure, so built as to provide an ample, even flow of heat through every part of the green crop. The heat required to cure bright tobacco used to be supplied only by smoldering log fires, which had to be tended night and day for 4 or 5 days. When Mr. Whitehead's barn is full, he simply turns on and adjusts an oil heater. Now the barns are full and the fields are empty. The plucked stalks stand nakedly where once abundance grew. Even with automatic equipment, the curing of tobacco cannot be hurried. 4 or 5 days is still the time it takes to change the leaf from green to gold. But now the process can be checked accurately, and as it progresses, the barn's temperature is alternately raised and lowered between 80 and 180 degrees Fahrenheit. This makes the tobacco leaf breathe, and a cross-section of a typical curing barn shows that all the leaves are allowed to breathe freely and cure evenly. After it is cured, the tobacco must be graded leaf by leaf. With practiced eye, Farmer Whitehead and his helpers sort out and segregate the different grades of leaf. This scene is being duplicated at this season all over tobacco land. To you and me, these leaves all look pretty much alike, but in the market there are many gradations determined by color, size, texture, aroma, and other factors. The ability to classify and evaluate cured tobacco at a touch or at a glance is one of those arts that men acquire only through long years of experience. It is one of the oldest and subtlest skills in all the folkways of America. After the leaves are graded, they are tied to make handling more convenient into what are called hands of tobacco, A dozen or so leaves laid together and knotted around at the stalk end by another leaf. Now the crop is ready for market, and when the owner judges his time is ripe, he loads up his truck for the first of several trips to the auction warehouse. Presently, all the highways are alive with truckloads of tobacco heading into towns where auction sales are held. Market time in each section of tobacco land lasts from 8 to 12 weeks. It begins in July in Georgia and South Carolina and ends months later in Kentucky. Competition is keen among the many warehouses in market towns. The farmers bring their crops to the trading floors in shallow baskets. Each basket is carefully weighed and checked. Tobacco selling has developed a system and a ritual all its own. The baskets of tobacco are laid out in long rows, each basket marked with the owner's name and the certified weight. Down the rows moves the auctioneer, followed by the buyers. Bids are made with rapid and subtle hand signals. The auctioneer sees in a flash whose bid is high, and the sales proceed with amazing speed. The auctioneer's clerk drops a purchase slip on each pile as it is sold. The farmer picks up his slip and takes it to the warehouse office for redemption in hard cash. A man with money in his pocket is ready to have fun. So market time is also county fair time in tobacco land. The whole family goes to town to hear the music and ride the rides, to gaze and gossip and see the sights. But the county fair is not for amusement only. Here, the progressive farmer can inspect and order the latest in farm equipment. At the fair, farm products are exhibited and awarded prizes. For tobacco land can grow the best of everything it needs and plenty of it. Here, farmers meet their friends from far and near, and the perennial topics of farm life are discussed all day. How did you make out this year? What prizes did you win? Mighty fine tobacco you've got there, Brother Whitehead. Surprising to the uninitiated is the number of refining and finishing processes to which it has been found necessary to subject even the best tobacco that money can buy. Prize-winning quality tobacco, the choicest, most fragrant leaves grown in the Southland, are what Liggett & Myers Tobacco Company purchases for Chesterfield every year. After their long aging in the warehouse, the hogsheads of prime leaf are taken back to the factory and knocked open. The hogsheads are mobilized at the factory in a certain but somewhat complex order, corresponding to the requirements of the secret Chesterfield blending formula. So many hogsheads of bright tobacco, so many hogsheads of Maryland, and so many of Burley. As it comes from the aging warehouse, the tobacco is too stiff and dry to be handled easily, so it is passed into a steam chamber where it remains for about 45 minutes to become more pliable. When it leaves the steam chamber, the tobacco is still somewhat compressed. The leaves must be pulled apart and fluffed out. Now it is passed into a second chamber, where it is conditioned again, intensively in smaller portions. before anything further is done, the tobacco leaves must now be rid of their tough fibrous stems, and this whole building where the tobacco is first received at the factory is called the stemmery. Quick-fingered girls untie the pliant hands of tobacco and feed the loose leaves into a machine which pulls the fine, tender body away from the tough stem and veins in the center. The stems are recovered and taken away to be processed into other products by chemical companies. Miles of endless belting and other miles of gravity chutes and air pressure pipelines provide motive power for the tobacco on its journey through the factory. After being stemmed, the tobacco is reconditioned to get it ready for blending, which takes place in big bins fitted with mechanical mixers. First, several types of bright tobacco are mixed together, tossed and blended like a tempting leaf salad. Different types of burley are also blended in a separate operation before being blended with the brights. The brights, Maryland, and the burleys are then brought together in other blending machines, large revolving drums, not unlike the drums used to shake up lottery tickets. But here there will be no drawing of winning or losing numbers. All the contents will come out on the winning side in a delicate uniform blend, to which, at the last moment, just the right amount of aromatic Turkish is added. The finished blend is now pressed into a solid cake, ready for slicing by keen rotary blades. These knives whirl around like an airplane propeller. Then, out onto the conveyor belt pours the fluffy harvest of blended tobaccos for your cigarette. In the cigarette-making room, miles of paper ribbon from the Augusta Mountain Mill are racing along, ready to be rolled around the fragrant tobacco. A cigarette is fashioned in a twinkling. Each machine makes 1,200 cigarettes a minute, or 20, a package full, every second. And there are hundreds of these machines turning out billions of Chesterfields each month. When the cigarettes arrive at the packaging machines, they are not wrapped up, as many people suppose, but are inserted, 20 at a time, into packages cleverly fabricated before the cigarettes arrive. The packages are mechanically sealed, and upon each is affixed an internal revenue stamp bearing the portrait of DeWitt Clinton. Each stamp yields the federal treasury 7 cents. The stamps required for just 1 day's operation of these machines would total about $1 million. Moisture-proof cellophane, the best that money can buy to keep Chesterfield tobacco at its best, comes last of all. And the red cellophane pull tab to make the package easy to open. And so into cartons go the finest cigarettes your money can buy, ready to travel to the ends of the earth, to wherever mankind smokes and will appreciate the world's best tobaccos. As autumn wanes in the Southland, the tobacco cycle has been completed. Now the tobacco farmer can take his ease, proud that on him depends a major American industry, an industry which grows and prospers in the new tobacco land, USA.